Alright, welcome back to the channel, another episode of The Process. I'm James Pack, and let's paint this image. Today we've got another episode of environment, photo bash, and digital painting techniques, but this time we're going to do something a little bit more on the organic side, not so fantasy, not so sci-fi, but something a bit in the middle, a bit more present, kind of present day, nature situation, maybe something that you see if you're walking along the beach. So let's go ahead and capture this and have some fun. Here we go. Alright, now with our photo reference all gathered up, if you look at this worksheet, a lot of the time the photo reference I like to put on the same sheet so that it's all kind of just collected together. I have some other ideas of some tutorials and such, so some other photo reference are up at the time being, but you can kind of see on the canvas, I'm just establishing an initial ground plane and sky. You've seen in other tutorials in the past that I've sort of done that, and in a similar fashion, wallpapering, initial texture, and just trying to get the initial feel of the ground to be correct, feel organic. There's a lot of different materials on there, such as rocks and sand, and perhaps some mud and water, so just trying to get that organic look, that organic feel. Now something that I like to do once in a while is, fill in the sense of the darks with just a big overlaying photo, sort of like this. And what this allows me to do is play around with the photo to fill in the darker recesses, especially towards the horizon line in the back, in the area closer towards the, where it meets the sky. That's where a lot of atmospheric perspective comes into play. So that's where I like to, really push the values there. Now, just really quickly, this is really just like a study and sort of a technique exercise. So right now I'm just starting with a very, very basic silhouette, and again, just like the ground plane, doing a little bit of wallpaper. Now, one thing that's a little bit different here is that the wallpapering is not just filling in the shadow side, but you can also see right here, the higher heat, the lighter textures are sort of acting as an area that feel like the whole place is getting hit by some light. Now, one interesting thing is, after every step, after every time we do this step of filling in the silhouette, it never fails. When we fill in the silhouette with these textures, our eye starts to see the outer shape in a different way. And it's so important that we go back into the silhouette and adjust it like this, because it gives us an extra sense of believability. If you think about it, in this shot, there's only a certain amount of silhouette that's really, really, really visible. And so it's important that we capitalize on those silhouettes. Now, in this corner, I'm just adding in some further details. This rock is started off as one basic shape, and as you can see, I always do this thing where I copy merge the initial textures that I just made, of the rock itself, and I like to duplicate it on top of itself with another texture. Add another texture, just kind of compounding it. So this is something that I really like to utilize as a trick. You can see it in the back over there. It's just the flattened version of the rock, and I can take parts from it and actually almost like Lego build this environment, So one of the efficiency tools and tricks that I like to teach in my classes at Brainstorm School, I teach a class that teaches sort of about this. It's called speed painting and photo bashing. And it's a class just to get familiar with techniques, because, Photoshop has a lot of tools, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So how do we narrow down some of the tricks and steps and focus that can just get us a more reliable and consistent result? And that's, I think, as an artist, that's one of the things that's so important, is getting a result that really matters. Making sure that the little brush strokes that I'm making right now, are they going to make a difference? Sometimes they do, and we love the effects, and sometimes they don't. Alright, now in the ground plane over here, I'm just adding in some quick water bits water puddles, and I like to do them in the foreground in a way where it almost feels like they converge and point towards the focal area, or towards the POI, the point of interest. And so I like to do a couple in the foreground, makes us feel like perhaps we're walking on the rocks right in the middle. We're avoiding the puddles on the side. So it almost gives us a way to navigate, and you can almost see and feel the way the ground works, you see the water. Now, what's a beach scene or water scene without some birds? Get that organicness. So again, working with silhouettes and a really quick pull from getting the silhouettes from a photo. But these are some of the quick ways that I like to just get the initial impression. Because in concept art, a lot of the time I get asked to do art like this, but kind of in a quick manner. Just to be able to see the results really quickly, so that the art director or a director can kind of see where the direction is going. So I like to do these pretty quickly, get the general impressions in there. And as you can see, I just kind of push some tone and lighting, just a little bit more, some saturation and some color dodge and some sunset in the back. But as we're working now, I'm just kind of playing around with a little bit more detail. Just trying to bring in those kind of extra areas of visual complexity. And I like to talk about that because it's kind of like adding in, little jewelry to your outfit, right? We become these little small highlights of the overall costume. And that's what these are. These are the overall little highlights, some of the key focal areas that maybe the eye will rest on. And we just want to make this sort of an exercise, And whether we're doing organic rocks like this, or we're doing other things, it's really important to remember that these steps, whether doing organic or sci-fi, they're pretty similar, And in other tutorials, I would love for you guys to check them out. We do ones for different themes, but look at the process and you see they're very similar. So thanks for joining on this episode. This was a real quick one. I am working on some other tutorials right now for some of the suggestions that I've been hearing, so please drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Alright, but gotta go over one more thing. I kind of skipped over some steps, so let's check it out. Now, with the ground plane, we can start off with almost any kind of photo, and it's just the base to kind of get a silhouette, because we can just really quickly start to fill it in with more and more texture, especially when we can use the same photo and just kind of fill in the green. So over here, I really like to use, the first layer setting. It's just a normal layer. It's pretty dark. It kind of just acts as like a silhouette. If you've ever watched the other videos that I have. And so from here, I'm just adding on the same photo on top of itself using lighten layer and darken layer. And what that does, it kind of brings out these different accents of lights and darks that are in the photo, and they interact with the textures underneath it, and you get this really cool interaction. It's controlled because you're using the same type of photo, the same type of material. So try to go ahead and explore with some of these techniques. I grabbed another part of photo, and this is more to get the texture of water and mud and that sort of thing. So one was about getting the rocks, and the other one was about getting some of the watery details. Okay, so right now when I'm looking at this when I'm looking at the result, I'm looking at it and I'm like, all right, it's starting to get the right textural treatment, but now let me start to get some real recognizable areas, right? Because an organic ground can look messy and it could look, pretty somewhat unrecognizable in a way, like nothing really pops out. But if we get a recognizable rock, or a really recognizable puddle, or a really recognizable patch of sand or dirt, then those become these nice areas of rest that our eye likes to kind of sit on for a little bit. So that's what I'm trying to create here. Okay. Now, one thing that I also want to mention is that I have to work on one aspect at a time. So what that means is that first I'm going to establish the ground plane. Next, I'll try to fill in with a lot of texture, and then now I'm adjusting values. And adjusting values is really simple. It's just whatever's further away towards the horizon line, just get a little bit lighter get it to sort of match the atmospheric perspective that's in the background. And I'm using a photo to do that, you know? In other instances, I'll use a lighten layer and like a paintbrush. But this time I'm just using different techniques to try to do the same thing. You know, we're trying to do the same thing. So just using photo to kind of fill it in, all right? Now moving on to the shape. Now the silhouette here is very, very important for us to kind of remember, because the silhouette is going to contain all the texture, right? So I'm just messing around with the shapes a little bit, seeing if I can get a nice big, medium, and small. I'm just trying to do something very basic, okay? Now I'm going to attach the texture. Lighten layer, I'm going to drop the saturation. I'm also going to make sure that it's a bit darker so that I only see like try to fill it in from the slower point. Now I'm just repeating the texture on top of itself and on top of itself, and I'm starting to see these areas and accents, and that right side of the rock is now starting to feel like it's getting hit by light. So I'm starting to like that, and now I'm just trying to repeat and duplicate that area, and now that's like my point of interest, you know? So it happened kind of organically, and I'm just trying to find a fun pattern. Notice that I'm sort of triangulating it in a way where it has a focal point on the silhouette. You know, the rhythms are kind of pointing into a direction. But what I'm also doing is using the same texture and hopefully just creating an interesting pattern, right? Now the pattern is set, and now my job is to basically make it look like it belongs in the setting now, okay? So initially, that's what's that, okay? Now, let me just start with some of the puddles over here. Now I'm using a lasso tool, sampling some tones from the sky, and I'm just doing a sort of thing where I invert the selection so I can paint darker accents, you know, on the dirt area, and then I can paint water inside of the selection. So I'm doing it in, you know, Control-Shift-I to basically invert, you know, the selection back and forth. So I'll paint it inside, I'll invert it real quickly, and then I'll start painting the darker accents of, you know, the shadow side of the mud, kind of, you know, banking on the water. Now, these water accents are super important because they also act as crucial composition elements, you know, and they're sort of pointing and navigating towards that rock that's sort of in that small rock that's in the initial midground, and the rest of the water sort of navigates us to the big rock in the background. So that's sort of an important, I guess, like compositional thing that I like to use a lot of the time, especially on the ground plane. Very similarly, we do it to the sky as well, just not in this one. All right, now let's see here. We want to start jumping into getting, yes, some birds, right? So let me just show you really quickly and kind of break this down. I have a photo of birds flying through the sky. You know, there's a lot of atmosphere in the back and clouds. So in order for me to grab the silhouette, I turn the photo into black and white, and then I apply a levels pass where I make the photo as black and white as possible. Then I'm left with the silhouette. Now I'm able to grab the silhouettes via, you know, magic wand or color picker, and I can do this quick application of a big flock of birds. Now remember, this is a speed painting. This is not something where we're trying to get super exact with the bird shapes and stuff. We get a really good impression, and that's what it is. We're trying to get the impression of it, right? And that's the important part of this that I want myself to remember, because I can sort of get carried away and just like want to get into the details because I want it to look clean. But I have to remember that this is about the impression. It's a little bit dirtier, like when we zoom into it, we could see there's, you know, pixelation, but we get the point, right? You can definitely see that. When we zoom in there, you see the pixelation on the birds. You know, some of the birds are like, they're like missing a head or, you know, something like that, right? But it's okay because it's about capturing the overall scene, right? Now, color dodge layer on black, right? And I'm trying to get just a little bit of pop and saturation in the sky. You can notice that the color that I'm using is a desaturated warm tone. It allows me to build up the kind of brush strokes on the color dodge layer little by little. Now I'm just saturating it up a little bit, okay? And this is something that I have a tendency to do because I have a tendency to paint a little desaturated. It's sort of I don't know, sort of a crutch that I have because I'm not too confident with saturated color. So I just sort of use a little bit of color push at the end, you know, with some of these correction layers. Alright, well, what's really important is I just wanted to break down a couple of these steps because earlier I know I was kind of going through them a little quickly. Let me know if you guys like this format because I can run through the whole tutorial pretty quickly and then maybe have these elements where I break down sort of more specific areas like this. So let me know in the comments. Alright, so this is a part where we're sort of now doing the last finishing touches to the speed painting. Right? Now, one thing is that a speed painting is about capturing the essence, right? It's about capturing what I say is like about 75% of the image, just void of the details. So if you want to follow along with this exercise, it's really, really fun. But what I would say is try to make sure that you keep it loose, you know, because photos can be really, really detailed. And so what I want to do with this last pass of just getting a little bit more visual complexity, right? Details have a funny way to make us think about rendering, but when I think about visual complexity, it's more or less just like, let's get smaller, more defined shapes in certain areas, you know? So I'm just picking one spot on this rock, right? On this very, very complex rock to throw in just a little bit more texture, and I'm trying to find a place where it'll work correctly. So again, using the mask, using the paintbrush, just bring it back in, find a spot for it, a little bit of detail, zooming in and out, just to kind of see and make sure that these details are making sense. So now that I think about it, I'm missing my navigator window, which I usually have open in order to see a thumbnail view of what I'm working on. So I should have had that. Anyway, just zooming in, getting some smaller, these little specular details, and just trying to get it so that, you know, when the eye looks at it, it's just trying to find a couple of spots to, you know, get the impression of detail. We have some more water, shadow accents that are just kind of going around, you know, and we're getting very, very close to basically just kind of wrapping this part up, you know. This is all like just like a little touch-ups here and there, you know. With a little bit more time, we could maybe do some lost and found edges, you know, we can do some clarity, which is, you know, if we look through the image, there are some photo bits lurking around that are just kind of there, but could definitely use a little bit more clarity and definition. Now this pass is really important over here because as we cut apart this big rock, we can give it further dimension. We can give it like a sense of volume with pushing some of the recesses further back and so on and so forth. So thanks for joining us again. This is the, you know, just a quick breakdown today, and I got some more coming for you guys, so stick around, and thanks for joining once again.